Gravity Falls, Season 1, Episode 11, Little Dipper. And hey, I was just complaining that we hadn't gotten a follow-up about Gideon's book in a while, and here we get a follow-up about Gideon's book. I mean, yeah, he doesn't specifically use the journal to do anything in this episode, but we know he's researching it, which was cool to see. I have also not been as subtle as I probably could have been about the fact that I'm not a huge fan of Stan, at least not yet. This episode made me like him a lot more. All of the times that he kind of offhandedly thwarts Gideon throughout the episode were very endearing. I mean, I'm still not convinced that he's a good person, per se. He still comes off as a little sleazier than I tend to prefer my characters. But as a character, I like him much better now than I did before. This was another episode that made reference to Dipper's insecurities, but thankfully they were finally addressed in a meaningful way here. The plot of the episode is as simple as plots for this show get. Seuss realizes that Mabel is just slightly taller than Dipper despite the fact that they've always been the same height. This comes in the wake of a series of chess games that he and Mabel had played that Dipper had won every single one of. That's important for later. And Mabel starts teasing Dipper, and then Stan gets in on teasing Dipper, and his insecurity resurfaces. And of course, his first instinct is to go and get his journal and see if there's a magic way to make himself taller, because that makes sense. Now, actually, surprisingly enough, in this world, that does make perfect sense. And he finds it. There are crystals out in the woods that, when light shines through them, depending on the angle, they will either make something larger or smaller. And I say something, but it only seems to be animals, and people by extension, not plants or objects, which is a little weird. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it was pretty interesting. Dipper collects one of the smaller crystals, and he affixes it to a flashlight so that it's reversible, and he can now grow or shrink things. Meanwhile, throughout the entire episode, Gideon is trying to get the deed to the Mystery Shack. He tries a couple of times. It's really funny, but you know the plots are going to intersect at some point. So when Dipper shows up a couple inches taller than Mabel now, and she naturally wants to know how he managed to pull that off, he slips and tells her about the flashlight. They start fighting over it, and then Gideon gets his hands on it. He shrinks them both down to use his ransom against Stan. Stan hasn't even realized they're not at the Mystery Shack anymore yet, though, so that's kind of a bust. And he goes by himself back to the Mystery Shack to try to shrink Stan and get the best of Stan for the first time in his life. Dipper and Mabel, though, are able to reason their way out of their makeshift prisons and even fashion a method of reaching the Mystery Shack just as fast as Gideon did. They even manage to get the shrink ray away from him and get to it before he recovers it, but before they can grow themselves back to normal size, Dipper presses Mabel to make sure she grows him to the same height as her. His insecurity has now interfered with his ability to protect his family. And this is where it's addressed directly. Mabel addresses it directly. She calls him out for being insecure. They get into a fight. Gideon ends up imprisoning them again. He shrinks Seuss, thinking that Seuss is Stan, and then gets into a little confrontation with Stan. There's a bit of a climax there, and the Pine Twins are able to, despite their size, defeat him, get the shrink ray away from him, return to their normal sizes. They forget about Seuss, which was funny, but they're going to fix it, obviously. End of episode. It was very good. It was a very high-quality, action-packed, well-paced, story-driven episode, but what made it stand out to me, aside from several great Mabel moments, there were some of the best Mabel moments of the entire series in this episode. She was great here, top form, but what made it really stand out to me was the talk that Mabel and Dipper had after Gideon captured them again towards the end. Dipper addresses the fact that he feels insecure, but he calls Mabel out for ridiculing him, and we get a reveal that she feels insecure too because Dipper is so much better than her at so many things, which harkens back to their chess games earlier. We see that they play all kinds of games and Dipper wins all of them. And so Mabel, she's now made this big breakthrough in telling Dipper her feelings, and Dipper realizes that he's not the only one with insecurities. Now they're going to be able to work through this together. It was just such a great talk. It only lasted like, I don't know, 25 seconds maybe? But it was a great talk, and the feelings were so strong. I absolutely loved it. It made the entire episode for me, and I was already loving the episode, so that's saying something. I liked Gideon a lot better as a villain in this episode. I will admit, though, I couldn't remember his name until he actually said it pretty late in the episode. And this episode does make direct reference to some secret hidden inside the Mystery Shack. Gideon has come to know about some secret hidden inside the Mystery Shack. And I'm betting it's that secret room that we saw Stan enter all the way back in the pilot, and I'm so excited they're bringing that back up finally. This was episode 11, right? So was this like a mid-season finale or something? Is that why this was such a big deal kind of episode? Or should I be expecting bigger deal kind of episodes like this going forward? Let me know in the comment section down below, as well as whether or not you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.